All right, everybody, welcome back. Burl's Basics on Bass here. We've talked a lot about the basics of bass and how to play and things we can talk about with our left hand and our right hand and rhythms and things like that. I wanted to spend a couple minutes on a short video of a bass gear buying guide. There's a lot of opinions out there. If you go on the internet, there's all these forums where RockOdd4287 will tell you, dude, that bass sucks, you need this bass. Well, here's the deal. I don't give a crap what that person says. What really matters is, do you like the bass? And that's going to require a little bit of investment in your time. Before buying the two basses you see here, I played any number of basses over the years. And in fact, it's funny. I'll tell you a quick story about this bass. When I was in high school, we had a precision bass. I hated that bass. And I was like, I would never buy a precision bass. They suck, so on and so forth. Well, what I didn't realize till much later in life was it had flat wound strings. So it had nothing to do with the bass. It was just the flat wound strings that gave a very dead, kind of upright bass type sound. And since I've been rehearsing a little bit and hearing some other people's basses, this has become probably one of my favorite basses. It's just old school, simple P bass. All right, so a couple quick things, and then we can get into some specifics. The number one thing, like I mentioned, is it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. What is important is, does this bass work for you? People have different size hands. People play different styles of music. People like different sounds aesthetically. So a bass that sounds fabulous to me and is absolutely perfect for my needs, you may play and be like, oh my God, this thing is terrible. I really don't like that. So again, I could skip the entire rest of the video, and if you took that piece of advice, you'd be in fantastic shape. Yes, I have Burl's chow hound here in front of me, and she wants to be part of the video too, but that's all right. Roxy, you want to say hi to the people out there? No, she wants a treat. All right, so again, I could cancel the rest of the video, and if you get that point, mission accomplished. You can read through all the forums and talking like, oh my God, this person doesn't like that bass. All the basses out there today are pretty darn good. There's no crap basses, there's no good basses, it's just personal taste. Number two, and I feel this is a fairly important part. Why? Because I'm a cheapskate. If I had $1 zillion, maybe this wouldn't apply. But for me being a musician, we don't have a ton of money. I buy all of my equipment used. While it's certainly tempting to go down to the evil empire and drop your dollars for this bright, shiny new bass that no one but you has ever touched and get that new bass smell, actually, there really is no new bass smell. You're going to get a tremendous amount of value if you just buy something that's a few years old. These basses, both these basses, and pretty much every bass will probably last your lifetime. If you decide this is something you really like, I would highly doubt you're going to outlast this bass. One of the guys I play with, one of the other bass players, he has a Fender Jazz bass from 1971. It's the first and only bass this guy ever bought. And he has played it all his entire life, and it still sounds like brand new. So again, your opinion is what counts, and you're gonna get a lot more value for your money if you choose a used bass. And we can talk more about some places to buy them. Let's go over a couple specific examples to show you what I'm talking about. I have two basses here. I have a 5-string and a 4-string. Really, there's not like, oh my God, you have to play a 5-string because 4-strings suck, or you really have, you've got to play a 4-string because what kind of moron would want to play a 5-string? So you've got to consider what type of music you play and what are you trying to do with your bass. I'm going to tell you, if you're a slapper, you want to get down and funky with that thumb, the 4-string is probably a lot better for your needs. I tell you, I don't play the low B string maybe but 10% of the time when I'm playing music. I'm not a slap player, so for me, I actually play the 5-string most of the time. But the only time it really is effective as a great tool is either you're doing a walking line and you're getting down really low, or like it's a ballad feel. And man, there's nothing better when that ballad comes in. There's a specific song I'm thinking of. It's in the key of D flat, and the bass doesn't come in until the chorus. Man, when the chorus starts and I hit that low D flat down here, it's just nice. It really, really sounds nice. But again, if you're slapping, you can see this B string It's kind of loose. We always call it kind of a little bit flabby. It's tough to get a good slap sound out of it. So most of the people I know who would do specific slap, you can just stick with a 4-string. You can do the job 100% with a 4-string versus a 5-string. 5-string just gives you a little bit more versatility for some specific types of music. But again, don't listen to the people like, oh my God, a 4-string sucks, dude. You gotta play a 5. It is up to you. All right, let's talk a little bit about some more things here. I'm going to talk about 2 specific type of basses. I'm going to break them down as American basses and imported basses. I have one of each. I have an American-made bass and I have a bass made in Japan. If you look at these 2 basses, there's not a ton of difference between them. And you know, Fender has the ones made in Mexico. A lot of them are made in Indonesia. There's not a ton of difference. And actually, I talked to somebody who's very, very knowledgeable in the bass scene, and he said basically what they are, the difference between the 2 is going to be the quality of the wood used in the neck. So like in your neck, this has a real solid grain, real straight grain all the way through the neck, where some of the Indonesian basses are cheaper examples of this. They're not going to have a very good grain. If that matters to you, great. If it doesn't matter to you, that's great too. And like you can see, the main Japan bass is also pretty nice. Got a pretty nice grain. Not a whole heck of a lot of difference. Okay, so we've talked the major difference between the American and the imported basses. Let's talk some nuts and bolts. Again, you have to keep in mind, what are you looking for? If you are looking for just to get into the bass experience and have the very minimal amount of money you can spend, get yourself an imported bass, something like made in Indonesia or even made in China. They are not bad. If you were just looking for an instrument to goof around on, and you can say, look, this is something I can play. Maybe you're a guitar player and they're asking you to play bass on one song or something like that. You don't want to spend a ton of money. Absolutely nothing wrong with, they'll typically have different lines. Like this maker has 3 different lines. They have their American-made basses. They have their assembled in America, assembled in Indonesia, checked in the U.S., and then they have their made in Indonesia basses. I have played examples of the ones made in Indonesia and also this one made in America. Unless you're a really sophisticated player, which I am not, you're not going to notice a difference between the 2. So they are totally fine. There's some bad basses out there, you know, like if you buy like a $50 bass from 30 years ago, probably not the greatest. All the ones made today though that are, you know, $200-300, they are totally fine, depending on what you're trying to do. So now if you step up to the American, and to a certain extent even the Japanese made basses. So you have your kind of Indonesian core, maybe made in China, made in Indonesia, made in Korea, places like that. That's what I'll call tier 1. Tier 2 are your made in Japan basses. Tier 3 is probably your made in America basses. Some people would argue that the made in Japan ones are nice as good, they're better. Again, take it for what it's worth. I'm giving you a free opinion, so you know what? Take it for what it's worth. I may be right, I may be wrong. But I'm telling you kind of relative to what I've seen. There's also basses made in Europe, made in Germany, made in Czechoslovakia. We're gonna try to call those all probably by the same as the American basses. So what's the advantage of spending some extra money and buying, you know, a made in America or maybe a made in Japan bass? The difference is going to be, it is a little bit better quality. It's going to look a little bit better. I noticed especially on the Fender, the made in Japan basses, just the precision of the finish. You know, this is kind of a sunburst or a tobacco burst finish. If you look at the blending of the colors and the vibrancy of the colors versus maybe a cheaper bass made in Korea, it is more vibrant, it is a little bit nicer. The fit and finish on these made in Japan basses are absolutely amazing, especially if you can find an older version made in like the 80s or the 90s. I believe it was at like a Fujigen factory. They are absolutely stunning. They're just pictures of art. They're just perfection. And they're a ton of fun to play, and they're gonna look a little bit better. Same with the American basses. You know, I have this bass. This is a made in the U.S., specifically in California. The gear inside of it is probably a little bit higher quality. I couldn't guarantee that because I have not ripped this thing apart and I'm not an electrical engineer. You do have a fairly beefy bridge, which is probably a step above what they're going to give you in a lot of Asian basses. And again, the fit and finish on this is just absolutely amazing. The tuning pegs are absolutely phenomenal. Everything stays in tune. It doesn't warp. It's fairly easy to adjust if you want slight differences. But let's break down the nuts and bolts. Okay, so I bought both of these basses used. Bought them on Reverb. This one actually came from Japan. It was really crazy. I bought this thing because of the yen versus the US dollar. It was cheaper for me to buy it in Japan and have it shipped over here than figuring out some way to buy the same bass locally. Those guys were absolutely amazing. The packaging on this when I got it was like, you would have thought this was some delicate, little flower the way they packaged it up, and it made it to my house in 1 week on my door front. Also, again, bought this one on Reverb, but it was local, and so not really any shipping issues, things like that. The nice thing about both these basses is I considered them an investment. I invested a little more money in both of them versus buying a cheaper kind of disposable bass, because I'm going to keep these ones most likely for as long as I play, which won't be a ton more years, but it'll be a few more years. When I am done playing, I will be able to sell this instrument and this instrument for as much or more than I paid for them. I've actually looked at some ads on Reverb and looked at pricing. This has actually gone up slightly in value. Haven't checked out this one, but I would expect about the same. So that is going to be the primary advantage to purchasing an American or a high-level Japanese or a high-level German bass, is they are going to keep their value tremendously. I tell the story of when I started playing bass in the 80s. After I was done playing, I dutifully packed up my bass. I didn't look at that bass for probably 25 years. When I unpacked it, a relative of mine was asking, hey, would you mind if I take that bass from me? I was thinking about having my son learn how to play bass. Well, he didn't like to play bass. So then she asked, hey, could I take this to Guitar Center and trade it in on something I want? Sure, no problem. It's an American-made PV, I believe it was a T80 bass. That thing was worth more today than when I bought it brand new back in the 1980s. So it was pretty cool. And I would expect the exact same thing from these. So the higher level equipment, you would expect to maintain more of its pricing. So if you buy a bass from Indonesia, something like that, and you're paying $300, maybe when you sell it, it's going to be worth $200, something like that. If you're going to spend, $1,000 or $800 on a bass, like these two, you probably would expect to get that investment back and then some. So you spend a little bit more up front, but you should get a little bit more on the back end. And again, to get where I've gotten has taken a lot of time. I have gone through a lot of basses because I was that guy. I was like, I need this bass because then I'll sound awesome. Boy, if I had that bass, then I would be really cool. Hey, let me try that bass. That bass might be a lot better. Well, it's kind of crazy. When I hit a wrong note, whether it's on this bass, that bass, or the bass that I paid $2,000 for, it still sounds like crap. If I get the right bass with the right notes, it sounds much better. And like I said, I played the Indonesian version of this exact same bass. It was funny, I had this bass, then they had the Indonesian version. It looked like, this bass had a child because they were identical. And I tell you what, if I played that and didn't let you see which bass it was, they both sounded to the unsophisticated ear like mine. Maybe if you're an audiophile, you notice a difference. For me, I didn't notice a difference at all. So I don't want to spend a ton of time. We can go next time into things like amplifiers and effects and cables and cords and straps and things like that. I just wanted to get this out there because I think there's a lot of noise on the internet about basses that are bad, basses that are good. You got to spend the time to play the different basses and see what you like, because your style might be different than somebody else's style. The music you play might be different than the music somebody else plays. So somebody else who's talking up bass A might be a completely different type of musician than you are on bass B. So take the time to choose. No bad basses out there for the most part. Number two, if you can, buy used. Even spending that little bit of money to get it shipped to you on Reverb, or maybe you buy used from one of the stores, totally fine too. You're going to be much happier in the end. And three, determine how much you're willing to invest. It is an investment. If you want to invest a little bit more and get an American made, that's fine, or a Japanese made, that's fine. But if you want to start off at a lower end, like the Indonesian and Korean ones, that's totally fine too. But it is an investment. I wouldn't say it's a cost, because generally speaking, about the only hobby I know that I can buy something for my hobby, I can use it even for a number of years, and when I sell it, I'm going to get the vast majority, if not all, of my money back. You know, that doesn't happen with cars, motorcycles, anything. So it's kind of a unique hobby and should be approached as that. I know that I can buy something for my hobby, I can use it even for a number of years, and when I sell it, I'm going to get the vast majority, if not all, of my money back. You know, that doesn't happen with cars, motorcycles, anything. So it's kind of a unique hobby and should be approached as that. All right, so I talked about, you know, kind of the different echelons of basses. This is an acoustic bass. I don't use this very much. I use this pretty much at home for practicing so I don't bug the family or bug Pearl. Pearl gets very angry if I'm playing too loud at night. So this bass is from China. It was pretty inexpensive. It still was moderately expensive because it is a Spectre. But I'll tell you what, I've gotten any number of compliments on this bass. It's a fun bass to play. There's no issues with it, no problems. You know, again, if I close my eyes and play it, does it have the fit and finish of an American-made bass? Probably not, but it does everything that I need it to do. Don't play it very often, certainly don't really gig with it at all. So it was just an example of I wanted an acoustic bass for a variety of different reasons, and it was much cheaper for me just to go out and get a Chinese-made bass and be done with it. I wasn't willing to spend the money or invest the money in a higher quality product. So this is a good example of when a lower tier bass might suit your needs perfectly fine. All right, so we'll be back next time. We'll talk a little bit about some amps, some cords, accessories, and stuff like that. And then after that, we'll get back and do a little bit more playing. All right, you guys have a great day. And at the end, please subscribe if you can to it, or give a like, or give a comment on things you'd like to see in future videos. All right, rock on. And remember, while it's only opinion, it does come from the opinion of the person with a beard of believability. All right, take care.